Today is a tutorial on how to light up a really small area, 2.5 meter wide and 3 meter deep, and obtain the same effect as this video here. Notice that it is even illumination on the background, and the subject is relatively pop and littered on the front. Today's video is about how do I obtain that effect in this small little area I said earlier. I'm Richard and welcome to ZP Productions. And the reason why this video even exists is because recently I'm inspired by this channel called The First Take. If you don't know what is it about, it is a channel on J-pop artists coming to sing, and the whole video aesthetics are really exactly what you've seen earlier. A clear off-white wall behind. The wall is not pure white, so it's not like super bright, and the subject in front slightly brighter than the wall, and therefore creating this very nice contrast. Of course, the way their First Take do it is probably they have a very huge studio to do it, but what I have is only a small little spot in my house, and let me show you this diagram here. This spot is only about 2.5 meter wide, 3 meter deep, and I have a wall of only 2 meter wide for the white wall, and only about a 0.5 meter buffer on the right side to give me a little bit of space to put stands. But I really want to maximize the white wall because shooting video is in 16:9 ratio, not 4:3, not 3:2, 16:9 ratio. I'm going to shoot a white video itself, like the First Take, right? And I'll achieve that effect. Now, before I start, let me shamelessly promote my channel equivalent, the Utao. It's a channel where I get my local artists in and they just sing cover songs for me, and I post in my channel. You can actually check out the channel in the description below. But yes, the channel is like the First Take, but it's just for covers. So they are not like singing original song, but they're just singing songs they like. And you know, with the current climate, I think this is a great morale booster to everybody, and a great way for people to share their talents, especially for singing, which is not trivial to produce, record, and ultimately publish. So, as I said earlier, I want to have the same effect as the First Take, and I want to do it in my small little area in my house, and I have to make sure that this setup is easy to tear down because it is part of the living room. That's actually how small our houses in Singapore are. It is part of the living room. I have to be able to tear down and set it up quickly, and I try to minimize the amount of cables on the floor. So firstly, I had a few thoughts on how to set it up. The very traditional way on how I do this in photography is really to have lights to illuminate the back wall and the subject standing far enough from the back wall so that they are not so affected by the lights behind. Then we will separately light the subjects up. So I did that in the first round. What I used was this thing called Nanlite Pavotubes. They are strip lights, as you can see here. They are strip lights, and I use 2 of them to illuminate the back wall, and I do it by hanging it over the subject's head in this picture here. You can see in this picture that you can see the power tubes above the subject's head, and they are slightly behind the subject itself. So their job is to illuminate the black wall, and then the subject is in front of the tubes, in front of the wall, and then they are separately illuminated by this thing called the Mixpanel 60 by Nanlite. Any LED panels can do it, but I use this one, and they are illuminated from the front of the subject and illuminate the front of the face. So this gives me roughly about 80%, 70% of what First Take does. The problem with this setup is that firstly, there is a lot of cables running around because there is these 2 tube lights. They have to be hung up above, high on the stand, with so many cables running around to just make sure that they are always illuminated. And then with a panel in the front, and then maybe need another panel behind, it is very messy and very hard to set up. So I have to rethink the way I set up my lighting. So I was seeing this channel called Curtis Jude, and he just reviews lighting equipment, audio equipment for purpose of movie and video making. And he was talking about this review on this light called Aputure 600D. It is a 600 watt light, and he was saying that using a big light, we have to think differently in how we light our areas. We can't afford to bounce, and this is something that is not very common in video, purely because to bounce a flash is simple. You know, in photography world, it is very common for wedding photographers to bounce their flash off the ceiling, and that's because flash compresses all the light into a small little, like maybe a millisecond or half a millisecond of power, and then just burst it out. So you can't illuminate the frame, you know, with a lot of power in that small little fraction of time. But for video, it's a bit different. You have to shoot at 150 of a shutter, and then you have to keep exposing throughout the entire frame and time of the entire video itself. So to do the same thing in video, you probably need like maybe a 1000 watt light, which is something that a lot of us don't have. So what I have is a 300 watt light, and I took what Curtis Jude said, we can bounce if we have a powerful enough light. And so happen I have a 300 watt light, which is barely enough, but I managed to do it. So I reconfigured my setting, and remember, the setup has an L-shaped wall. So I'm trying to maximize the L-shaped wall now. First, I have a light that is pointing to the ceiling to bounce off the ceiling itself. And the light had to face away from the wall, because if it's facing the wall, what will happen is that the background wall itself, remember, the background wall is the one that is behind the singer in the video. I want it to be evenly illuminated, not like one side brighter than the other. So I cannot afford to bounce off the left wall. So I have to shoot the ceiling, bounce it down, and I have to keep adjusting so that the amount of light hitting the left wall is the same as the amount of light that's going to hit the other side of the back wall. And therefore, when this light bounces off this left wall itself, it will illuminate the other wall at the front and don't create a funny gradient that left side is brighter than the right side. And how I achieve that is, of course, using a light meter. I slowly adjust my bounce light. I slowly adjust it down and up the angles until I get something like somewhere pointing, what is this degree? 60 degrees is about there. So it hits the ceiling. Some of the light gets hit on the left wall, reflects on the back wall. Some of the light hits on the ceiling and then hits the back wall. And then it kind of creates a nice illuminated even effect. The question you may be asking me, how even is this way of illumination? If you have a time to slowly adjust your video lights and you have a light meter, I would say as the difference between the entire frame is plus minus about 2/3. No, wrong. Should I say plus minus 1/3, which means the extreme ends of the frame will be no more than 2/3 different. And the center of the frame is just slightly brighter. So I was measuring the center of the frame to be about f8. And the two sides of the frame are somewhere between f6.3 to f7.2, about there. So the center is slightly brighter than the rest. But yes, no more than 2/3 illumination around the entire frame, which on general in video, when you post-process, it looks generally even, if you ask me. Of course, using a light meter. So I just bounce off the ceiling, slowly point the light down and rotate the light left and right till I get the same illumination of a very flat back wall. After that, what I did was exactly the same as the first time. I set up my panel in the front of the singer and I slowly rotated the frame. As you can see here, let me show you. If you slowly rotate, see, if I don't want any light to hit on the back wall, I just want the light to just shine on me. You can actually slowly rotate. See, notice that I rotate until no light hits the back wall and then only the light hits on me. Exactly, that's what I did. I slowly rotate until no light hits the back wall and only the light hits on me. Even though I don't have a grid, I don't have any honeycomb, you can still use this method to just control the amount of light hitting areas that you don't want and hitting areas that you want. So just slowly rotate until you get illumination on the subject without illuminating the background. And then exactly, you get the same effect as the first round using like 2 power tubes and 1 light. Now you just use 1 huge bounce light that goes to the ceiling and 1 side panel. And I must say that this setting is a lot easier to manage because firstly, I don't have any stands that go super high. I don't have any lights that are going above the subject's head. And not only that, I can reset up this whole setting easily because the lights are just slightly above me and pointing upwards. And this panel is just at the side there, illuminating the subject itself. And this gives me a lot more space now to set up the mic stand and place the subject and allow me to shoot exactly what you see in this video here. More than half body for a female subject. Average Asian about 165 cm, 17 cm, and then with a wall of about 2 meters only in length. In fact, based on what I measured, I'm shooting almost 1.9 meter wall. Considering this is an L shape and where my camera is placed, I'm shooting nearly 1.9 meters of the wall and evenly illuminating the entire wall itself. And that is the technique I use. Bounce to the ceiling, measure with a light meter, use a panel, slowly feather away the light until you just hit the subject itself. And then, of course, for the bounce to the ceiling, slowly adjust the angle so that the amount of light hitting the ceiling is nicely spread out. And therefore, when it hits the background, it is evenly illuminated as you see in the video here. Now, what's good about this illumination is because the light is going up the ceiling and coming down. So the subject has to be really close to cast any shadow. In fact, the subject has to be about 20 cm from the back wall to cast any form of shadow. As such, I can now move the subject backwards a little bit, about maybe 40 cm to 50 cm away from the wall, and yet still cast no shadows and allow me to get a bigger body shot, a more body shot in a frame that is the same as before, which I think is probably what I want to achieve out of this video. Now I hope you enjoyed this short little tutorial because I'm so inspired by the first take and I wanted to create a similar channel that I really spent a lot of time and effort trying to understand how do I best light my small little area there. It is not very easy, and I think if you were to try out yourself, unless you have the equipment on hand, it is really hard. And just expecting you to buy the equipment is also probably very tough, considering that most of the lighting equipments are not like very budget itself. Just to share you the price of the objects that I use, or should I say the price of the lights that I use. This Forza 300 here costs about 1,000 Sing dollars. I think in the US it's like 800 USD or 900 USD. It's about 1,100 Sing dollars. This Mixpanel here costs about 600 plus Sing dollars now. In US it costs 640. The power tubes here, I remember they cost about 450 to 500 per piece in Sing dollars. I think in US it's about 400 per piece, 400 US per piece. And then I also use the Aputure Nova. That is an expensive light. It's about 1,009 because I got the one with the drag case. 1,900 USD. In Singapore is about nearly 3,000 Sing dollars. So lighting is not cheap, and really if you do not have the luxury like me to slowly explore and get the lighting you want, seeing other people's video is probably the best way. And doing videos is really not the same as doing photos. Photos you can use speed light, which are very cheap, $100, and still get the same effect. You just have to maybe lose a bit of aperture here and there. But in videos, you try to get deep enough aperture. You need to constantly illuminate the entire scene, and really by looking at such videos, you probably can learn a lot and therefore waste less money. I hope you enjoyed this short little video, and I want to share my experience of doing this whole thing up. And remember to subscribe to this channel and my other channel that does the cover if you like to listen to Japanese anime songs. And that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time again. Bye bye.